Hi everyone. Welcome to Roots. Hey Mom, how you doing?
Hey, Alexander. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
But anyways, yeah, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone back to Roots. Um, as a brief recap, this is a series of conversations with my mom. Hoping to include some of our family as well to help us understand our history, our present, and to hopefully link the two with the intent to connect us in a way that is even stronger than before. So we're going to be deriving content from the book. We'll be going deeper into the specific chapters. It's not going to be like a book summary itself, but I want to uncover questions that aren't asked in the book. And I want to have conversations about, as I'm reading through it, the themes that arise. And I think that, that'll be pretty interesting. So, yeah, ready to do this, Mom?
Sure.
All right.
Let's have
Cool.
fun.
Great. So we're going to start off with chapter 1, the Hua family. And so a brief kind of like context on the chapter. So a lot of it, I have questions about understanding the framework of your family, understanding, like what your family's values were based on, and then how that shaped you, how that shaped your parents. And then maybe, we can talk a little bit about, what you passed on to me from there.
Wow, that's a really broad question, and this is not going to be enough for 30 minutes.
Yeah. But I think I want to just break it down. I want to start breaking it down, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of it. With that last point. But I wanted to open up with just kind of asking you that open question, right? So like your parents and your grandparents, they originated from China, right?
Yes, both sides of my parents. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Whereabouts in China?
I don't know much about China. I didn't know anything about China until 3 years ago, 2017.
Oh wow.
Daddy and I went to China, and I did not go to the village that my dad was born. I don't think he ever, no, he came to Vietnam when he was 3, so he never ever even had a chance to go back to where his own roots, where he was birthplace, where
Mm-hmm.
he was born. So
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of sad.
But either way, your I guess your grandparents and your parents came from China, and they went to Vietnam, right?
Yeah. So to my understanding, um, my paternal grandparent went to Vietnam around 1940 something. I think either pre or post World War II. I want to say pre, because my dad was born 1936, and he said that he was in Vietnam when he was 3. So I would say that, yeah, they probably went right before World War, not right before, but before. So it's got to be 1939 or
Mm-hmm.
1940, in that era. And one thing I know is he was born in Guangzhou. So that is a province in South China, very
Mm-hmm.
close to Vietnam. And I know that my grandparents come from a fishing village, and my grandfather, Ong, he was a boat merchant. I
Okay.
think his father, my great grandfather, was also a boat merchant.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so they do a lot of trading between Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia. I suppose those are the places that they travel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think they all migrate, I don't know, as refugee, if they run away from China or they just migrated to Vietnam in the early 40s. I want to say that 1939 and 1940, the fact that I know my dad
Uh-huh.
came to Vietnam when he was 3.
What
Now,
was the cause of like what was the potential cause
famine,
of that being a refugee?
famine,
Famine?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, I know that somewhere along that line, there's famines also in South China.
Mm-hmm.
And since China and Vietnam had this relationship for thousands of years,
Mm-hmm.
Vietnam was a colony of China for many, many years. So there's a lot of influence. There's a lot of traffic. You know, people go back
Sure.
and forth from China to Vietnam, and a big influx of Chinese from southern China moved to Vietnam because Vietnam is such a prospered country and it's easy to farm and easy to do trading. Lots of Chinese holding the economic power in Vietnam because they do import export from China to Vietnam.
Uh-huh.
So
Was that the same? Was that the same for your, and that was all on your dad's side of the family, right? What about your
that's
mom's?
mostly on my dad's side. My dad's
Yeah.
side never did go to the rural countryside. So my dad's side, they live in a sector in Saigon. It's called a huge Chinese community. There's a lot of Chinese, and I'm talking about Chinese with many different dialects. So
Yeah.
it's very intra diverse sort of Chinese. So we have Teochew, we have Hokkien, we have Mandarin people, Hakka. You know, it's a slew of different, but they all be able to communicate and do business in Vietnam, in South Vietnam.
And
On my
that's kind
mom's
of
side,
interesting. Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. It's just kind of interesting because it almost sounds like your grandparents and your parents had their own immigration story before they had to,
oh
pick up
yeah,
and do it all over again.
oh yeah, they all have immigration stories. Almost like 200 years ago when people go to New York, right? From Poland, from Ireland, from whatever country, they all have the immigration story. And Vietnam, it was just an influx from Chinese, just like Europe to America.
Yeah.
And they all have cluster, like the Jew would live together in one cluster, and Cantonese would leave cluster with themselves together. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's many different pockets, but they are Chinese,
Hmm.
and they do stuff together. And we have our own sort of like isolation. We have integrated a little bit with the Vietnamese, but mostly through trade association. We don't really have like it's very rare. I couldn't say no because there's a lot of intermarriage too.
Sure.
But it's almost like, we keep to themselves and they keep to themselves and we just do business.
I
But we
mean,
don't
yeah,
have interrelationship, personal
yeah.
sort of thing.
Well, if you could draw if you could draw a comparison between kind of like settling and integration between kind of like what you experienced in like an American society versus what your parents and grandparents experienced in like their like that like Chinese community within Vietnam.
Yeah,
Like
it's
what
like
were
you
some
go
like
to New York.
what were some stark differences between the two? Like what if you ever recall like your grandparents or parents talking about it at all, or like even things that you observed growing up, like what would you say was unique about that situation of your Chinese community living in
Well, we
Vietnam?
keep our own language. Like we speak our own language. At home in our community, we don't speak Vietnamese.
Hmm.
Um, I myself didn't learn Vietnamese until I was like, I would say 8 or 9 years old when we start having maids in our family. And it's very common for people to have maids. And a lot of time maids are coming from rural country. People, have um, could not find to make a living. So the best thing is just go to be a maid for people in the city. And for communication, my mom's always known how to speak Vietnamese because she was born in in the countryside. So
Okay.
she's got a lot more influence in Vietnamese, and she learned to speak Vietnamese at a very young age. But my
Hmm.
dad did not speak Vietnamese until he was like 36 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wait. So
Yes.
so like his whole thing about like having his own it was a cotton and textiles business, right?
Yep.
Is that
Fabric dye.
all
They
done in his
all,
like
everything,
dialect?
they all associate with a lot of Chinese,
Okay.
lots of
So
Chinese.
the community really was that large where it was like you could
Oh, yeah.
you could exist in your own bubble of language
Yeah.
and culture and really
There's
not.
Vietnamese school and there's
Mhm.
Chinese school. And I never really have to go to any Vietnamese school. All my life, I went to Chinese school until
Wow.
the communists come in. Then we have to treat ourselves like we are now in Vietnam,
Right.
like
Well,
the real Vietnam.
but before that, I mean, like, because when I compare that to like, like and we'll definitely get into this later, but like when you migrated to the United States, right?
Hmm.
Your bubble's very small. The
Hmm.
English, like American presence is all around you.
Yeah.
But in was it the case when you were in Vietnam where it was like you stay within this bubble, you operate it within it, and then you're safe here. But and then like the outside Vietnamese bubble, it's like you just don't touch it. Like what
That's
was that
right.
like
That's
culturally?
right. And there's term that is not pretty, that exchange. And when I was young, I didn't know much better. You know, you just kind of repeat sometime the adults say thing, and there's discrimination. Yes. I can't say that it's all, but there's pocket that people liking each other. And my grandmother, my mom's mom, do a lot of business with a lot of Vietnamese too.
Hmm.
So, I mean, you can pick and choose whoever you want to deal with,
Hmm.
but usually people deal with their own kind. It's sad to say, it's not as, I mean, they do because they need to, for survival, for business. But if they could, you know, I would be frowned upon if I'm married or dating a Vietnamese guy in Vietnam.
Sure. Hmm. Well, that did. I think you kind of changed expectations there because you ended up marrying a Vietnamese guy, right?
And so I want to say, just, you know, sometimes it's good to never say never, because
Hmm.
God
Don't
have
tempt
a
fate.
way, God have a way to put things in you that you say never, I'm gonna give you a test.
Yeah,
And
don't tempt fate.
I know.
Hmm. Well, that's interesting. And I think like that bubble, I can't really imagine or picture like a bubble being that large where you can like reside within it, and then that's just kind of like that's your safety zone almost.
Yeah.
Do you feel like by doing that, um, you you had like specific types of values or ideas that were kind of like put like that were taught to you uh, that you
I
wouldn't have had otherwise
yeah, I
if
want
you
to
were living in a
say
more culturally open environment.
that the Vietnamese and the Chinese values, it's not huge different. The only difference is when people are blowing up in proportion. You know, raising up by my dad, he's always stocked up a lot. So the Chinese would buy in bulk and then just sell it to the Vietnamese. And that's why so much trading in Vietnam, because the Chinese mentality is, I'm going to stock up. So buy it when it's cheap and stock it. And that's why, you know, a lot of trading grocery store of Chinese, because they keep saying that if you have 100 Vietnamese people, a family around you, you'll be rich because you can just buy and sell back to those Vietnamese people. That's
do
what
you
I learned from my dad.
do you think that's kind of like um
It's a
historically
stereo.
taught by context? Because like when you think like I'm assuming Vietnam didn't really have like a major famine hit it up until that point. So like when you have like Chinese like food conditions, they're trained to save, buy in bulk because you never know
It
when you're
could
gonna run out.
be. It could be. You know what? War teach you a lot of things. War teach you to save. War
Hmm.
teach you to always be ready. So I would say that people who migrate from China to Vietnam, maybe there's a lesson that they learned from their parents, just like lesson that I learned from my parents. You know, never live beyond your means. And I always like never really have a credit card debt, because that's how I was taught. And
Hmm.
maybe the Chinese that went to Vietnam have that mentality, because maybe the Vietnamese people, you know, it's just like there's like a stereotypical. I think this what I don't know how true it is, but you know, we always saying that the Vietnamese people like to flaunt, and Chinese, they're just like very stable. They would wear the same clothes if they're rich or if they're poor. You know, you can't tell, and that's what they want to portray. I don't know how true it is, but my parents always, you know, when adult talk, kids listen. So I
uh
always hear those kind of things.
you also said that like there's some very similar ideals between Chinese and Vietnamese culture as well, right? Like
Yeah.
what can you go into like a couple of those?
Well, respect to their elders.
Sure.
Always, you know, always respect your parents, obey your parents.
Hmm.
Whatever your parents want is what you should aim to please them.
Hmm.
They both have the very similar sort of like Confucian's philosophy to live by. You know, respect your ancestors, even though they're pass away, but you should always, you know, be proud of them and remember them. And the filial pieties, that's a big thing, you know, like if your parents want your flesh, you should there's a movie that this little kid would cut their flesh for their parents because their parents was dying from hunger, you know.
Jesus.
Those are kind of movie and things that we
Ugh,
watch when we were
brutal.
young, and that's
Hmm.
kind of teaching that very similar between the Vietnamese and the Chinese. uh, I think pretty much all throughout Asia you probably can find the same thing with Koreans or
So
Japanese.
just super hierarchical, respect your elders, do what they say, never
Yeah,
question it.
and respect your you know, doctors and teachers.
Uh-huh.
They're like,
Sure.
yeah.
I kind of I want to stick on that for a little bit because I think that's something, you know, that has definitely adapted and changed over, you know, the previous, or I guess the following generation, especially, you know, between you and me. But I kind of want to keep the focus on you first because I think I guess the question that I have first is why do you think that was so important? Because like if you think about other cultures, right? They encourage their younger generation to be independent, self-thinking, go out, do your own thing. So like
You know
why
what, I want to stop you right there. I think this
Mhm.
is the generational things, because if you are talking to people in like baby boomers or people, senior people, lots of them come from the very similar mindset and background teaching like people in Asia. A very nuclear family probably don't get to teach about, you know, be what you want or you can do everything. Back then, maybe after the 60s, the revolutions or whatever,
Mhm.
then things change. But I think, you know, right now we raising kids are so much
Oh,
different than,
you have a really good point. You have a really, really good point. No, you're absolutely right. I didn't think about that. Huh.
yeah.
Why do you, what do you think changed from your opinion? Because I mean, let's be honest. Between you and me, that was that turned out very differently between, you know, like what was between you and your parents. So
Hmm.
like what do you think changed? What do you think was
Well, I think this, the environment, the society. If I were not in America, I would raise you exactly probably how my mom raised me,
uh-huh.
because that's accepted in the society. Society push you whatever. I mean, I don't want to say just peer pressure, but that is the way society accept you. You know,
Hmm.
society accept men to have second wife, third wife in Vietnam back then, probably now too, because it's almost like if you can afford it, you can have it. That kind of
Hmm.
mentality. So it's not a whole lot of guilt for a man to do it because, hey, my brother-in-law is doing it. Oh, my friend's doing it. You know, everybody is
Yeah.
sort of like accepting. So if you are raising kid like you are back then people would say she's so liberal. She does not know where her family value or whatever, you know. So I think a lot of influences is from the society that you live in.
Hmm. Very
And I
interesting.
learn from my friends, you know, I watch how they raise their kid. And TV is a big factor of influence too.
Yeah.
You know, Brady Bunch taught me a lot.
Man,
I
that's
never,
pretty cool.
I was like, I was at awe, you know, how Martha can just slam on the door and run to the room and cry, and the parent have to stand there, you know, Jane, Martha, you know, and then trying to apologize. I was like, wow, this
Uh-huh.
is different.
Yeah.
It's
Very
like we
different.
never ever dare to walk away from our parent when they're talking to us, let alone
Hmm.
scold us, you know, but very,
Yeah.
very unusual for me when I first came to America.
With the whole growing up under kind of like that filial piety umbrella, never questioning your parents, always doing what they say. Um, did you ever at some point find yourself disagreeing with it or questioning it?
Oh my
Like,
God, plenty.
Yeah.
But
Like how
hey,
so?
well, um, lots of anger from within, like you know
Sure.
that you're being treated unfairly,
Sure.
and you can't ask question. You can't not even demand. You can't even ask for anything because you know that it's going to be shut down. Not just that, you're going to be shoot down, and you're going to be shoot at too.
Mm, goodness.
So
But
yeah, it's very very different. But I have to say that there's a way that how they teach their children, and I have to say that discipline is good sometime because we did use discipline with you sometime. Just to make you know that you're wrong. But we also learned that if we're wrong, we should apologize. So
mhm,
I don't think is a good way of being extreme on either side. Like you can't just put your kid on the pedestal because
sure.
we are the helicopter parents too. We
Mhm.
always like it helps when we are majority and you are the minority. You're only one. So I mean, both of us always taking turn to keep an eye. Is like he's playing game or is he studying? But I think to the extreme is bad. Anything to the extreme is bad. If you are
Mhm.
just keep treating your child as like a child all the time, they will never grow up. But if they are not grow up yet and you treat them like a grown up, then they wouldn't grow up to be a
It
person with value because
it feels
they
like you
were still
got
too young.
yeah. It feels like you got both of that. You got both sides of that coin growing up because I mean it sounds like you write about your dad really trying to take care of the family and provide whatever he could whenever you guys needed it, but also at the same time you were you were almost forced into this heavy role of responsibility growing up, not even like before your siblings were introduced into the picture, but just like kind of like this expectation of what was assigned to you was something that you just kind of had to
Yeah, I
accept
think
and go with in a ways.
there's a lot of expectation when parents have their children in Asian society. They expect you to do well in school. They expect
Hmm.
you to be obey. They expect you to do good things. They expect you to be respectful. It's like they expect you a lot. And if you are not doing the thing that you should, then sometimes those expectations turn into anger. And
Hmm.
why don't you do what you were taught? Because that's good for you. Because if you are not a good son, you can never be a good father. You see what
Hmm.
I mean? Like their job is to make sure that you are a good person in society. I mean, Confucius is very big on, you rule from the top, from country to family to individual. It's always, there's a hierarchy structure that you need to follow. You need to know your places,
Hmm.
it, that is the main thing in that society. Is like it's very governed by a set of rules that everybody should follow. Everybody have their own responsibilities.
But you feel like, to your point, that also by doing that, it gives no room for you to work the other way. It gives you no room to question.
It's
It gives you no room to kind of like talk back and speak for
That's
yourself.
why your uncle, my brother, got into so much trouble because he's the creative one. He's the
Uh-huh.
daring one. And he does not like to be confined in the lanes that is drawn out for him.
Did you have a strategy for, in a way, applying that to me? Because I say that because like I think in a lot of aspects you've kind of taken that hierarchical like approach and you've kind of just let it go with me. There's a lot of instances
Well,
where
there's going to be a
like
lot of things that we're going to talk about between me and you, how I govern. But I think this episode is about my grandparents. You want to find out? So
yes,
we're
I'm
gonna
sorry.
we're not gonna steer into that direction because because we want to focus. Do you have any other question about your grandparent or your great grandparents? Because I want to tell you that I have limited knowledge, but I get a really good memory about what I was told about my
Mhm.
grandparents. And because such I have so limited knowledge about them. I preserve them very carefully because that's all I know about them.
Mm-hmm.
So I know the fact that your grandmother, no, your great grandmother, my grandmother, my dad's mom,
Mm-hmm.
she, from what I heard from the family, she gave birth to 6 of her children by herself. That's how Chinese women are very capable back then, because not because they are capable, but because they were
Jeez.
forced to. Under the circumstances, they have to do whatever they need to do. And she delivered her own child, 6 of them, 6 children, get up and clean up, boil the water, clean the baby, and then, be back to work in 3 days.
That's insane.
And I almost fall out of my chair when I heard it when I was young, because, I've never met my grandmother. She died when my dad was 25, or 23 or 20 something,
Mm-hmm.
early. So my
At
dad,
some point, also, your grandpa on your dad's side um was disabled at some point, right? Like he wasn't able to
no,
contribute
no,
in the way that he wanted to.
no, that's a grandpa on my mom's side.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Mm,
Grandpa Ong, my Grandpa Ong, I never know him. He got shot when he was 44 years
mm.
old.
By the
He was carrying a bicycle, walking down the dock to the boat, and the French guard thought he was carrying a gun from a distance, so they
mhm.
shoot him, and he died on the spot.
Wow,
And
that's crazy.
and my dad was 10 years old.
Hmm. Holy
So
cow.
I don't know a whole lot of story, but I know he was a merchant. He's a boat traders. So he
Yeah.
trades, and then he has a Vietnamese second wife because he's traveling so much,
Hmm.
and he has a second uh, a mistress that had 2 children with him, that my dad also took her in as a mom, because my dad, when his mom died and they found out that my grandfather had a second wife who had 2 kids, so
Wow.
my dad said that that is almost like his mom too, so he took over, and he also took care of her, so they all take care of her.
Hmm. But like by all accounts, even after that, your grandma comes off as like a very strong, intelligent, independent person that was able to kind of like, you know, drive their own ship after even after the man of the house had died,
Both of
right?
my grandmothers are very strong personality. Okay, my dad's mom, super hot temper. I think that's what my
Hmm.
dad got it from. But I heard that she was even worse. She was
Goodness.
even worse. She's got a temper. I mean, she was a widow and she's 38 years old.
Hmm.
She has a little infant and her husband got shot. And her oldest son was 16. So
Hmm.
she was single, handle, uh, single mom, and trying to raise 6 kids. And what I heard is she beat the crap out of all her kids, because she's super super hot temper, and
Hmm.
she would fly objects and she would beat them. And that's, it's not a very glorious thing to hear about your grandmother, but that's what happened when you have a legacy. Doesn't matter good or bad, that's how you
History is
are known.
important. Context is important.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, like, do you feel like, I mean, after all of that, right? Like, it really feels like, you know, the women of those families kind of steered the ship. Do you feel like because of that, your family kind of broke the mold in a sense of what was expected out of kind of like a traditional family, or do you feel like even after all of that, they still followed it pretty well?
Mm,
In regards to like when you think about filial piety, in regards to like what responsibility is and how it's assigned, like do you feel like they kind of followed that mold, or do you think they broke it a little bit?
um I don't know, I can't speak for them.
Hmm.
I All I know is my dad is really into his family. I mean, he would do everything to protect his brother and sisters, and then his wife and his children. And I think because he had so many traumas when he was young, so when he loved somebody, he was so afraid of losing them. And he had a need of in control, meaning he needs to know everything you are doing, because he's just afraid that he's going to lose you. If you do something wrong, something danger, it's going to harm you and it will take you away from him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's super protective and super hot temper. So that
Yeah.
does not make a good recipe.
Huh. It's a lot to think about because, well, I think it's really important to set this framework because that's what kind of, you know, bled through the cloth and it was passed over to you in a way. And what you did was you know, you took that, you made it your own, and then you passed it to me. So I think, you know,
I
it's really helpful to set this
Yeah.
framework, and I want to keep referencing it, you know, as we, you know, talk more about you.
And one thing, when I hold you in my hand, when I had you,
Hmm.
when I gave birth to you, I just feel really sad that you didn't get a chance to meet your grandfather, both sides, because your dad's parent passed away, both of them.
Hmm.
And I feel like, I feel there's a loss for you. So many kids have grandparents, spoil them. You have one grandma,
I
and
think she's enough of a character for four grandparents.
but oh my God, my dad would treat you so different. I know to that fact from what he treat us. You will be a spoiled rat. That how much I know. And I know how
Mhm.
much he will be so proud to hold a grandson. Not a
Mhm.
granddaughter, but a grandson, because a grandson or a son is everything to him.
Mhm. I think I mean it's hard to really kind of like make conjecture about what could have been or what was. I think, you know, at the very least I'm just grateful for, you know, what we have. You know, I've
Yeah.
learned a lot. I've learned a lot from grandma, but you know,
Yeah, your
it is
grandpa
what it
would be
is.
so different. Your grandpa, I mean, oh well, like you said, you can't I just know that he would be so happy to hold you
Hmm.
in his hand.
And either way, I think that, like, you know, I get to experience at some points what my grandparents would be like, you know, through my family, because, you know, they taught you, they raised you, and you guys raised me, and so I think that's perfectly fine. That's
We
enough.
broke the mold.
Yeah, you guys definitely broke the mold, that's for sure. But anyways, I think
Okay,
that's a great way
to wrap
to
up.
end this session and wrap up.
Yeah.
Again, I think like you know, understanding the framework of where your parents and your grandparents came from is going to
And
be
we can
really.
talk about the Chinese society in the Vietnamese in South Vietnam the next episode.
Yeah. Well, the crazy thing is, I just didn't realize that it was such a bubble. I didn't realize that it was
Oh
so
yeah.
kind of like inside outside. Like, you know,
Yeah, I don't know if
it makes a lot of sense though when I think
you
about
ever
it.
go to Chinatown in New York. It's like 10 times that big. So we
Mhm.
would pretty much now own Chinatown in Vietnam.
Wow. Yeah.
We're not just like
But
two streets, or and some alleys, but we are actually a little city inside of the big city.
mhm. Wow. But yeah, so thank you everyone for tuning in. Again, with all of these conversations, we hope that at the very least it's relatable, that you guys can connect to it. And feel free to, you know, continue the conversation however you want. You know, I know all of my mom's.
And if you like the episode and you know that anyone who has family that was struggling between the two generations, this is a dialogue that we want you to hear so you can understand each other. So if you like the episode, subscribe so you know
Yep.
when's the next episode.
Hmm. And then for the next episode, we're going to kind of break down your immediate family a little bit more in depth, and talk about you growing up as a kid, which I'm very excited for.
Okay. All
Mhm.
right.
All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.